very much. My name is Richard. I'm going to talk to you about the Hepple Wilds project. We're just going to run through a quick introduction overview of the site, of myself, what we're going to be talking about today, and then I'm going to run you through kind of the big three things that we've really done at Hepple to create the change that we're going to be talking about. So go through our natural grazing, the wetland projects that we've done, and as well as the encouragement of natural regeneration across the site that we've done. I'll then touch on the ecology and the monitoring work that we're doing to try and improve the benefits of everything that we're doing that I've already talked about. Then go on to touch about the volunteers that we have, which kind of, they do a lot of the work that we do on site is led by this really great volunteer team that we have, and also partnerships with other people like NHSN, who come and do fabulous bioblitzes for us in the summer. And then touch a bit on the other financial aspects of the estate, which is the ecotourism and the gin distillery, which people might have heard of. Just a quick bit about myself. This is pictures of me in three of my happy places with fungi. Out in the woods, this is actually me finding a coastal sequoia in Northumberland, which was amazingly exciting, and also up a hill with a dog. I am from Northumberland originally. I grew up just next to Bowland Lake, and I went off to Scotland, to Glasgow, to do a zoology degree, and then a master's in conservation. Worked in the Highlands for a while as a wildlife guide, and then came back to Northumberland to be a consultant ecologist before joining the team at Hepple at the very start of this year, so January 2025, so I started full-time working at Hepple, which has been a really great project. I wear many, many different hats at the site. So I am the ecologist, guide and volunteer manager. So as an ecologist, I'm assisting on quite a lot of the background ecological monitoring surveys that we do. We have a fabulous conservation manager called Mary Goff, who sort of organises all them and leads on all that sort of stuff, whereas I do quite a lot of the on-the-ground survey work. And I'm also in charge of the ecotourism side of things. So we do guided tours, experiences, ID days, that sort of thing, which kind of under my supervision. Too soon? Cool, as you can see, I didn't have too much fun with the drone this year. So, after you've seen that lovely montage, you're probably wondering, where is Hepple? So this is a map here of the Northumberland National Park. So Northumberland National Park, if you don't know, is off to the west of the county, sort of mostly along the border with Scotland as well. Newcastle is probably about where my hand is waving about here now. We are part of the National Park. We are in the lovely spur that comes out from the centre of the park towards Rothbury, and if I do a little zoom in there, it's going to get far too blurry, but at the top there you can still see Rothbury, and in the middle there we've got the Simonside Hill Range, Elsdon just to the south of us, and if I circle it there, that's where we are, so the western end of the Simonside Hills. For those of you that would like a map that actually you can read, I've got an OS map here of where we are vaguely. So we are 4,000 acres of, as you can see, mostly upland areas. You can see all the contours on there. We've got a lot of hilly ground, you probably saw in the video there. Just south of the village of Hepple, all that land around there. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but a lot of you will be aware, I'm sure, of the sale of the Rothbury estate. So the Wildlife Trust and the Northumberland Wildlife Trust are currently purchasing the Rothbury estate, who are going to be sort of our direct neighbours. So that's just really, really exciting. If you've heard of the Rothbury estate recently, that's where that is compared to where we are. So yeah, really looking forward to working together with them on various different projects and partnerships in the future, I'm sure. Bit more in depth again. This is the Coquet River, which makes up our northern boundary, so we are lovely situated in the middle of Coquet Dale. So yeah, that's off looking towards Rothbury there. So yeah, really, really lovely place. The Coquet River itself is a really lovely feature to have. It's an absolute sort of GCSE geographer's dream. It's got oxbow lakes, it's got meanders, kind of everything you read about. So yeah, it's a really nice feature to have. A little bit about the timeline of the project. I should say this is I'll get to it in a bit. But yeah, the estate is owned by a couple, Walter and Lucy Riddle. The family Riddles and Walter's family have owned the estate for about 200 years. So the early 1800s they inherited the estate when it got used for sort of small-scale farming, some forestry, and the mining of coal and lime, interestingly, wasn't very profitable. So thankfully they didn't do too much of it, otherwise it would have quite scarred the landscape that we're trying to change now. By the 1900s, all the way really up until the early 2000s, it was a sort of series of fields being mostly sheep grazed, big plantations of forestry, and then all the upland areas were used for grouse shooting, pheasant farming, and partridges as well. There was small bits of juniper still holding on, that sort of thing. And then coming to 2000s, about 2010, Walter inherits the estate again, and moves up back from London with his wife Lucy. They set up the gin distillery, which I'll talk about a bit later. And yeah, towards the end of the 2010s, they were really inspired by other projects in the country and across Europe, bringing biodiversity back to estates similar to Hepple. So that's what they decided they were going to do. Importantly as well, the economics of the estate as it was really weren't adding up. Sort of the grouse shooting was costing a lot of money per year, it wasn't bringing in anything. And at the time, 2000s, there was a lot of government schemes that were starting to benefit you. So you're starting to get a lot more money through your farming subsidies if you're doing things to benefit biodiversity. So it was a really good time to make that move. This is a bit of a picture of the starting point. So this was taken in 2019, I think. So what the site was kind of like in 2020. Very green fields, sheep grazed, with fairly high densities, not as high as other places for sure. And you can see in the distance we've got the really green fields as well, spread out. Some big blocks of conifer plantation you can see there in the background, quite densely planted, and very short monoculture of ling heather in the background. However, I'm not going to say it was all terrible. It was still a really nice site in 2020. If you go to projects like NEP in the south of England, they start off obviously with mostly an arable farm, so sort of the biodiversity increases there have been huge because they started off with a relatively clean slate. However, I'm not going to say that Hepple was a clean slate to start with. We had 4,000 acres of really lovely landscape, and we had red squirrels, we've got ring ouzel there, nesting waders, curlew lapwing were nesting, ancient woodlands with bluebells and herb parrots that you saw in the video, some good white-scrap grasslands, some blanket bog, nice butterflies such as small bordered fritillary and some large heath as well. The problem was, I guess, all of these things were hanging on. Sometimes they were really restricted to small areas, they'd been damaged in the past, in case of the blanket bog, for instance. So they needed help to recover and help to spread. They were never going to increase their numbers. Some species, like the ring ouzel, the waders, were declining. Used to be black grouse on the site as well, they'd gone, so there's quite a few cases of species that were missing from the site that should have been there. So that was kind of a reason to really kickstart the project, was to protect all the things that we had and try and bring back the things that we lost. To do that, the estate came up with a 100-year vision, which is going to come across very, very slowly. But basically, it was to try and create everything we do. Basically, is the main question is biodiversity going to benefit from this decision? And it's going to be at scale as well. So we're not just talking about small pockets on the site. The whole estate, all 4,000 acres, are part of the project. They're all being part of this wilding scheme. Can we produce good quality things from the site as well? So high quality water, food, drink. All of these things are part of the sort of economics of having a rewilding site. What can it do for people? So the enjoyment, well-being factors of that. So will people get a lot of it sort of mentally and sort of in their soul from being on a site like this? That was a big decision as well. Employment as well. So since the project started, the employment has actually gone up. So myself and Mary and now someone else part-time as well are employed, which is an increase from what was there before. And we have still kept on the staff that were on the project before as well, before it was a wilding project. Underpinning all this, though, importantly, is that it has to still make economic sense. You can't have projects like this consistently losing money, because that's not a sustainable model for the next 100 years. So we have to put in place measures and other economic factors like ecotourism, like a gin distillery, that can still help the estate make a profit to then fund the works that we do to help biodiversity. Ultimately, our interpretation of rewilding, so rewilding is a really dodgy word that everyone really likes to say because everyone thinks it means different things. Do we just sort of make a big fence around Hepple and just let everything go mad inside of it? No, we don't. Still do a lot of work, we still manage a lot of things, we do a lot of the hand digging stuff and ripping out fences, and we've brought on different animals that do things which to some people maybe that's not rewilding, maybe that's just a different way of farming, which we're very fine for that to be the definition as well. To us, sort of rewilding is letting nature take the lead a bit. It's restoring natural processes, and the best way we think to do that is to try and introduce and recreate natural systems that will then sort of take the work off us eventually. One way of doing that is to introduce native species, and by this I'm not meaning that we've got lynx and beavers and bears running around Hepple. The main thing that we've done to introduce, and it was brought on right at the start, was we took off all the sheep, which are a non-native grazing animal, and we brought back on some of our missing species, or as close as we could find. So this is a picture from the Lazo caves in France, which dates to around 20,000 years ago. There's got pictures of aurochs here, old native ponies, there's elk on there, and this is an old skeleton of an auroch, which was this huge cow, about sort of 1.5 times the size of our biggest cows now. Huge range of natural grazing animals, in some cases that have been lost from the landscape, but we have tried to bring on, as good as we can basically. So we have a lovely herd of Exmoor ponies, which is that, obviously the pony on the picture there. They are the sort of closest relative to what would have been the native pony maybe 20,000 years ago. Some people might argue actually that this is the native pony, genetically the same, it's just come from a very small remnant population in South England. We brought on Mangalitsa pigs here, which are a Hungarian breed, but they are actually very genetically close to wild boar, but they just have the added benefit of not trying to maul you, which wild boar have, so we've gone for those ones instead. We have 2 breeds of cattle, so we've got English Longhorn on the top there and the Highland cattle there, which are our auroch stand-ins, because they're big, heavy, got big horns, they can smash up scrub, they can break the grass as they walk around and stuff, so really great benefits to us. All of these animals are outside all the time, year-round. They don't have any shelters to go into apart from the woodlands, which they're free to access. And we have ripped out miles and miles of fences as well. So a lot of the site is accessible to these animals at any one time. They can free roam around big bits of it. At some times of year, we say actually, that maybe having too high an impact here, or maybe we'd like a bit more impact in here, so we can shut off some key boundaries. We maybe have 3 big chunks, you could imagine it as. But at winter time, for instance, so any day now, all the gates will be open and they can just roam around much of the site, which means that we get diversity in our grazing pattern. We get some areas really heavily grazed, some areas really lightly grazed, and that just creates a nice mosaic, which is all around better for biodiversity, and that's kind of what we're seeing within our sward. So already, basically what sheep do, and if you leave them at high densities in small areas, they'll crop everything really low to the ground, which only helps grass really, because grass thrives in that environment. They take out all the nice juicy flowers, the orchids, that sort of thing, leaving you with sort of pretty boring low diversity field. If you have lots of cows and ponies over a wide area, you get a big diversity in the sward makeup, and you get a lot more nice flora coming through. So that's kind of what we're starting to see. A lot more orchids. We've got huge orchid beds in some of the wet meadows that we've got, and we're starting to see some more heather spreading through some of our upland fields. And we've got some really nice hay meadows that we have seeded with yellow rattle that are really becoming nicely diverse now. That's the cows and the ponies. Pigs are a bit different. This is a little video of what pigs do. It's a really big satisfying bit to get to the end, which is nice. So yeah, these are our Mangalitsa pigs at work. So they are rootling, and they are getting their, they're just their noses, but they're so strong and tough they can get it in through the grass. So the grass, when it's left at high densities, makes a really tight sward. So any seeds or flowers trying to come through really struggle. The grass gets a further stranglehold on this field. Pigs get underneath all that. They go for the grubs, they go for the nuts and things left under the ground. So they help us by creating this big bit of bare earth where seeds and things can land on and get a bit of a head start if they need to. And we've also had slow worms basking in them, and we've had things like mining bees using these open areas of soil within the field sort of start making nests, which is really encouraging to sort of, that's another great feature that these guys do. In summer as well, if we get really heavy rains, we found that these create little pools as well. So little tiny pools that are really transitional, they come and they go within a week maybe, but those are really good for invertebrates as well. Where previously there was no water being held in these fields, we've now got little pools everywhere. The increase in the swarm diversity is also really beneficial to lots of invertebrates, like butterflies and things, as well as moths. So we've got all these different butterflies, orange tips, chimney sweepers, large heath and green hair streak that we've seen increase in numbers since we started our grazing regime. We've had butterfly transects in the summer. We have a local volunteer, Mike Boxall, who's absolutely amazing. He comes basically every week throughout summer without fail. There's 2 big transects across the site, and yeah, he's recorded over 20 species of butterfly on those transects, mostly through our wood pasture areas, which has been really, really cool. We actually had, I see David in the crowd somewhere as well, who was one of the NHSN bods who came out this year and did 1 night of moth trapping with I think maybe 6 moth traps across the site, and recorded 1,200 individual moths of 120 species, which I thought was pretty amazing. So that's that. On to subject 2. So I talked about grazing, and the other big thing that we've done is water. So this was a pond that we started digging in 2021. This was it, just 2 years later. Yeah, really nice space now. And then actually, yeah, this is it now this year. So it really sitting well in the landscape. For us, water is the real basis of everything. It's obviously really, really important for invertebrates, for plants. Those invertebrates are eaten by other invertebrates, but also birds, and then other things eat the birds. We've now got otter that come into this pond pretty much every day by the signs of the spring and sometimes of year. We've had over 10 species of dragonfly recorded in the ponds that we've created just since 2020, which is really encouraging. Again, we've got Chris Wren, I don't see him, but he's an interesting volunteer as well that comes and does dragonfly surveys. And yeah, astounding number of dragonflies and damselflies. This was a pond that was just created, or rather a wetland series. There's a few ponds in there maybe, but it's a whole sort of series of trenches and dams that we've blocked. Ditches that we've blocked with dams. This was finished in January this year, and we've got another few to do, but we put in about 5 new ponds at the start of this year. Already, so they were put in January. By March, April, we'd seen frog, toad and palmate newt breeding in the ponds, and then this year we had at least 5 dragon and damselfly species using these ponds within the first year of being active, which was amazing. It also means that we've seen increases in, we've seen bog myrtle, which is a really important plant to us. It goes in the gym. And also things like wild angelica that are spreading over our wetter areas, which are really good for invertebrates and also for our dragonflies and amphibians. It's not just the sort of water that you can see that we're really keen about. This is a huge blanket bog that we've got on site. This is bottle moss, which is about 8 to 9 metres deep of peat. We include this obviously in our wetland works because they are a sort of type of wetland and they retain a lot of the water. So it's a huge big bowl full of sphagnum moss. You can see in the past, so probably actually about 60, 70 years ago sometimes, those drains were put in, all those straight lines across that moss were drains that were put in to try and dry that moss out, to try and increase the amount of area for the header and for the grouse shooting. So a lot of the work that we've done is trying to block those areas back up. So you can't quite see the ditches because the dams, sorry, dams in the ditches. You can't quite see the dams because they've grown over so well in the last sort of couple of years when the main work here was done in 2022, 23. But there's 3 of the main ditches across the moss. We've got a series of dams in, and then behind that you can see the pool starting to form as well. So we get more standing water, which is what the sphagnum wants, and so we get more growth of sphagnum, so that moss is starting to start to breathe again. This is a lovely picture of golden bog moss, which is quite a rare sphagnum that we recorded in very large areas this year. It's starting to really expand, which is really encouraging. And we've also got quite a good population of large heath butterfly, or we know there are large heath up there, and they were recorded in good numbers in the 1990s. And then this year we're looking forward to the Butterfly Conservation coming out and doing transects as part of their new scheme looking at the heathland as moths. On to subject 3. So, as well as that grazing, water creation, we're really trying to encourage natural regeneration across the site. So previously, to benefit the grouse industry, sheep were encouraged to graze upon the heathland, and there are very high numbers of deer in the area as well. Also, we've removed the sheep, and we do deer control as well, so we cull deer on the estate, and all of that is to try and increase the natural regeneration across the moor. Ultimately, we want more diversity, so we want more tree species and other plant species to colonise these areas of dense ling heather. We don't want to get rid of the ling heather by any means, it's still a really important flowering plant, but we just want to shake up the mix a bit. So there's some areas, all of these are sort of adjacent to existing birch woodlands, where we're really encouraged to see how much is spread out from these areas, and that's where we're starting to see really nice, interesting mixes of moth species and things coming through. And we're also starting to see things like oak, birch, and oak, pine, and rowan growing in amongst the birch woodland, which is sort of creating a bit of a incubation area for older growing trees. This is another picture of the birch regen coming through, which is only in 5 years of the project happening. That, as I said, these are some of the pictures that I took when we were sort of doing some moth trapping this year. Nice mix of species, and some heathland specialists as well. Those ones really help our insectivorous birds. So we're seeing big increases in our warbler numbers. Redstarts for me have been phenomenal since, I've only been sort of knowing the site properly for the last 3 years, and I feel like I've seen an increase in the redstart numbers. It's been really interesting to see. This year there was sort of one tapping on my window in the office, which was quite cool. So they're doing really well, and cuckoos as well. So we had about 5 cuckoo territories across the site this year, which is really nice to see. They obviously eat caterpillars, so they are very dependent on invertebrate densities and things, which is really cool. Something which I couldn't really work out how to fit it into another slide, but we don't have any little chemicals on the site as well, so our livestock are fully organic now. We don't have any additional chemicals added to them, or worms or things, and then similarly we sort of try and avoid using chemical control on any of our site as well, because we do unfortunately have invasive species. So we have rhododendron, and we have Sitka spruce. So you saw on that video there, we had a great volunteer session this year. We had about 15 volunteers from the Young Wilders, we'll talk about in a second, came out, and they pulled out over 700 Sitka spruce saplings from the moor. So that's really important, because if those species are left unchecked, they can start to create a really unbiodiverse environment. So yeah, we don't use any chemical controls then either, just sort of rely on pulling them out or chopping them down. This is a really busy slide about sort of basically the monitoring work that we get done. And so this is not just us, we are a very small team, but we have a lot of really nice partnerships with other organisations that do different surveys for us, or do different work with us, or just sort of work with us in different ways. I'm not going to run through all of them, but you get a bit of an idea of what we're doing. Generally, however, we're doing lots of really nice scientific monitoring, using these different approaches. So we've got camera traps out for our red squirrels and things. We do peat coring and soil sampling. We've got some moth trapping and things going on. And invertebrate analysis, we've been doing a project called Bioscan with the Sanger Institute, where we have a monthly malaise trap, where we then send all the invertebrates that we catch from that off to there, and they analyse all the DNA. And it's really useful for the tiny, tiny fly species that can't be identified by the eye. And then this year we got, I think, something like 60 species that were new to the area, and like 40 of them were new from Northumberland, which is, just because people can't record at that level, so it's really interesting to see those. But this is a habitat map that we had done at the site, just to show you the diversity of the site, and to show you the non-diversity of some of the fields that we've been looking at, that we're really going to hope to sort of they will get more patchy and blobby as the scrub spreads out. Yeah, the big pink areas at the top there are sort of modified grassland fields. Interestingly, this is our condition assessment, so sort of through the B&G metric, if anyone knows how that works. The red areas are very poor, yellow areas more moderate, and the green areas are good. So that's kind of showing you the conditions of the areas of site. As I said earlier, we've got quite a lot of really nice things that we want to protect and expand, while there are still red areas that we want to work on. This system isn't perfect. For instance, the green, big green blob to the south there is our moss, our peat bog that has been drained. So for us, it's not good condition, but for the metric, it still reads it's quite good. So there's still good work to do in those areas. My own surveys this year have been lots of fun. So as I sort of say, all this monitoring work is to sort of look and to see if what we're doing is providing that biodiversity uplift that we want, and sort of, just to record what's on site and what's doing well. So I did a lot of really good waxcap grassland surveys this year. Waxcaps are something I'm really passionate about personally, but from a wilding perspective, I find it quite interesting because waxcap grasslands are textbook, even a textbook of where you find the biggest answer is sheep grazed pasture, which is true. Sheep grazed pasture land do really well for waxcap grasslands. So it's interesting to come to a site that was sheep grazed and now has changed that management, and to see how waxcaps are doing. And in some places they have decreased from where they were. That's, not going to lie about that. However, there are areas where the horses graze quite intensely, or we have good levels of cattle grazing, where the waxcaps have actually interestingly increased. So one of the fields that was surveyed in 2019 had 14 waxcap species. I recorded 18 there this year, which was quite interesting, including the glistening waxcap there, which is IUCN endangered species. Done lots of butterfly transects, I already mentioned, so good numbers of small-scale border fritillary this year, as well as dark green fritillary, which is actually a new record for site, or a new record on our butterfly transects, which, seeing as they've been going for I think 4 years, is quite a good record to get. And also did a lot of bird surveys. We partook in the BTO National Heath and Bird Surveys, so we did every grid square of our site, which was 21 grid squares. We did at least twice, which is quite a lot of nights of nightjar surveys. But we did record really, really healthy numbers of nightjars, both on the site and adjacent to us. So we have quite a lot of plantation forestry adjacent to us. So a lot of the nightjars that we recorded were calling from those areas. But really, really encouragingly, what I sort of found the most interesting was we had at least 5 calling males from our regenerating birch woodland. So again, textbook for nightjars. Is heathland woodland, but it also talks a lot about, certainly in Northumberland, a lot of the nightjars are in forestry plantations, recently felled ones or regenerating forestry plantations. So it's really, really encouraging to have them quite happily in our young birch woodlands, because that's what we're going to see big increases of. And we're going to have a huge variety of ages of birch woodland, over many, many years on the site. So there's going to be good habitat for those birds for quite a long time. Also very interestingly, in the birch woodlands, while I was looking for nightjars, I found a brood of long-eared owls, which again is another species that textbooks do really well in conifer woodlands, conifer plantations, and yet they were in some of our nice big old birches on the moor, which was quite cool to see. We've had lots and lots of help from others. All these species records are really good, but me and Mary can't claim credit for all of them. This is a picture from this year's BioBlitz. We had really good attendance. We really focused on invertebrates and got a lot of our invertebrate numbers up on the site, which was really cool to see. Hugely appreciated to everyone that comes out to do those sorts of things. We've had visits from the Wednesday Botany Group. Picture of them at the top doing some really good sedge ID. I think we had one flush that had about 11 species of sedge, which was really cool to see. And then this year, as well as September, we had the fungi group out. They recorded over 140 species this September just in one woodland, which I think is just very, very high total for the group in general. But over the last 3 years, or the last 3 visits, they've come to do 3 different woodlands, and we've got over, I think, 250 species across those 3 woodlands of fungi, which is really good. So that's really encouraging as well, because we're doing a lot of work to encourage deadwood on the site, which is important for those fungi. something I've been working on is this ongoing total species count for the site. So this is kind of there's still records to be added to this, but yeah, currently we're sitting at about 1,500 species that have been recorded on the site. Yeah, it's really nice. The invertebrates this year were really helped by the BioBlitz and the other flies recorded from that bioscout project that I mentioned. So we had a lot of flies picked up through that. We've just got to a nice round total of 300 from the other side. So very cool. 103 birds is really, really interesting. We did a bird walk 2024 where we had 59 species recorded on a sort of 5-hour walk, which was a really exciting total. And sort of reflective of the different habitats that we've got on site. They do better on fish, so I think they've probably done a short change. The volunteers are really, really important as well to the site. So there's some pictures of Peter, who's just removed a nice stretch of fence for us. We've got a species of piri-piri burr, not your common piri-piri burr, but a weird rare one that has spread onto the site. So that's some of our great volunteers hand forking that out of the cobbles. We've been doing some dam making, so we've got quite a few ditches through our woodlands, again taking water off the site that we don't want to happen. And while we haven't got beavers yet, we've been using our volunteers to make beaver dams, and they've been really successful in making new little pools throughout the woodland and creating a bit of a water environment. Hugely grateful to an organisation called the Young Wilders as well. If you don't know them, they are a youth-led organisation that are encouraging young people to get out in nature and sort of do volunteering and work at different sites and that sort of thing. I think their definition of a young wilder is between the ages of 18 to 30. So they had a really good sort of summit, sort of conference, festival almost in May, which had sort of about 70 people come and camp out at Hepple and did a range of talks and different activities, which was really exciting. And then this year they led that session of Sitka spruce pulling I mentioned as well. So yeah, really good organisation to have working with us. They also employ 2 wild stewards. So we have 2 of their sort of staff members, if you will, and they get employed 1 day a month to go to a site and do a project. So at the minute we've got 2 great people called Lakshmi and Lies, who are helping us with our juniper propagation. So juniper is a really important species to us. I think I've just realised I didn't include a picture of it in the presentation. But yeah, we have good population of juniper on the estate, and they are helping us with our reseeding of juniper. So we have a small tree nursery, and they're helping us with the best way to get from seed to juniper, which is really exciting. Ecotourism is something that we're really starting to build. So the last year and a half we've been building our ecotourism wing. This is a really important way to get more money into the estate to help fund and do all the really important things to do for nature. As we look forward, at the minute, the government subsidy schemes are really good. They really benefit people that are doing more for biodiversity and more for habitats. Who's to say what the government will be like in 5 or 10 years and whether they will benefit nature as much as current systems do, and even if it doesn't always feel like a lot. So we kind of have to start building in these extra measures to try and get a more sustainable income into the estate. So yeah, ecotourism is one wing of that. So we've been doing guided walks, tours, bird ID days, driven safari tours for people that can't walk quite as far, and really trying to introduce people to the concept of wilding and the nature that we've got on site. We've been working with other guest leaders for some really specialist days. So we've got Alex Hyde, who is a sort of natural history photographer, done sort of stuff with National Geographic and won numerous awards. So he's led 2 weeks on the site and got some really, really amazing macro photos, which have been cool. We're just lining up next year to work with Mark Cocker, who is an author and sort of just general naturalist, who's going to hopefully lead some sort of nature writing days, creative writing sort of workshops, and also hoping to do sort of nature sketching out and about in the wilds at Hepple as well. So those are things that we're working on at the minute for next year. Really proud that they so far seem to have been quite well received, so we've got lots of nice reviews on TripAdvisor, and excitingly we are up for 2 tourism awards next year at the North East Tourism Awards, so new business of the year and regenerative tourism, which is really thrilling to sort of see nature tourism being such sort of well recognised. So that's exciting. Can't not mention the gin. So yeah, started in 2015. Walter and a couple of friends started the Hepple Gin Distillery, or sorry, Hepple Spirits Distillery. We also make a couple of different vodkas and a slow gin as well. So yeah, really important part of the economics of the site. I've recently undergone a revamp, so if you don't recognise it, we've got a new bottle this year. And yeah, it's a really, really very good gin. I'm only slightly biased in that opinion. Overall, the aim of Hepple is there to be something for everyone. The casual birdwatcher or fungi expert, sort of the budding nature author, artist or photographer, even the well-matured gin drinker. And while we want to provide a base for people, it's most importantly, a really interesting home for nature. And it's somewhere that's hopefully going to be full of lots of surprises for years to come. One important feature about wilding sites is that we don't know what's going to happen. You know, we've got ideas of what we want to happen. We're doing things in the hope that this X, Y, Z will happen. But we don't know for sure. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens, because nature is going to decide for itself. And yeah, we look forward to welcoming you to Hepple someday to see it all for yourself. I will now take any questions, and this should take you to our website.